Okay, this video is complicated licks made easy. This is more of a conceptual video than learning a technique necessarily. But remember, on your guitar, you're going to eventually have to memorize the notes on your neck. There's really no way around that. But there are some visual patterns that you can use that will help you out. And one that we've talked about before, and I want to go over again, is the fact that if you have notes on what I call these string courses or pairs of strings, like the E to A, the D and the G, the B and the E, that you'll, whatever fingering you use on those two strings, these two and these two, you can get whatever lick or arpeggio or scale that you just played in the next octave using the identical fingering. So we've talked about using arpeggios, and I'll use this simple shape. Let's say for an A, I'll just play A, C sharp, and E. So A at the 5th fret on the E, the C sharp, 4th fret on the A string, and the E, which is the 7th fret on the A string. So by the way, I'm tuned down a half step, sorry. So your guitar might sound like this if you play here, but we're just back up a half step from wherever I'm at. So what I'm doing here is playing A, C sharp, E, then moving up an octave to the D string and playing the exact same pattern. So, and then if I go to the 10th fret, A, exact same pattern. So, and so visually that's very easy to see versus learning a pattern that would do something like this. Okay, which is a very good pattern, but just a little bit more difficult to see or memorize on the neck. And also for phrasing, I mean, what people would call like a sweeping type pattern, because you would be running on adjacent strings. It's typically built for speed, not necessarily for phrasing. I think you'll get something a little bit more cool if you phrase the idea. But what will happen a lot of times is you'll start to see a bunch of different arpeggios or maybe little simple licks that you can just string together. And so what would sound like a complicated lick is actually very simple in concept. Now playing it may be a different story, but at least you'll have the idea down, and then you can always practice to play something. I mean, there probably is not a lick out there. If somebody else can do it, you can do it. I mean, even the best players in the world, it's not like they have extra fingers that you don't have. So trust me, if somebody else can do it, you can do it. Now you may not know what they know. That's a different story. You're not going to be able to hear what they hear, but you can pick a single lick and learn it. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to combine some concepts. For instance, there is a G major arpeggio a whole step back from an A, obviously. And if I go to its octave arpeggio, that would be here. So what I might do is stack the A arpeggio and go straight to the G arpeggio. Now if you take the two together, you can think of it as a polychord, but I think of it as just simply an extended chord. Basically, if you're familiar with some theory, then what it's going to be, with your root note being an A, your intervals would be 1, 3, 5, flat 7, 9, and then 11. If you're talking about being over an A root, or you can think of it as just simply a G major stacked right above pitch-wise, and physically right above each other. Now, there's another little lick that is really, really simple, which is just kind of taking a minor third. In other words, if I'm playing over an A chord, a C note, and passing right over the minor third, if I do that an octave higher, you hear that a lot, like really common lick, and I'll do it again an octave higher. So I may take, so again, right in a row, right in a row, exact same thing, and then with G, and I may just throw those concepts together. So what I might get is a lick that sounds like this. Play my A arpeggio, my G arpeggio, go to my minor third, pass over it, okay? Then I might play the G again. So really the same two licks in a row. And you can slide or hammer, however you want to phrase it. Now, sometimes what I do is throw a note, an extra note or two. And all that really does is makes it rhythmically more interesting and possibly disguise it. I mean, disguise is kind of a funny word, but if I just went, then obviously you're hearing I'm playing the exact same thing in octaves, and a little bit too simplistic sounding. So what I might do is when I phrase, and all I really did was added the extra D, the 4 or the 11. And you get a very interesting sounding lick with really just 3 simple concepts stuck together, and you would practice each one individually. And put the lick together. And what happens is, I mean, it doesn't, and then when your note choice is good like that, we can play the lick very slow. Or you can go through it much quicker. Sounds good either way. And that's one more very, very important tip about when you're playing or deciding on what notes you're going to play. Or if you're learning somebody else's solo, a lot of times the difference between what makes something sound very good and not maybe so good is it's not necessarily the speed that something's played at. If the note choice is good, then regardless of the speed that the lick is played at, it sounds very good. Sometimes if the note choice is bad or not that interesting, then what happens is the players have to play the lick fast. Like for instance, if I just play straight up and down a scale, I kind of have to play it at a really either quick tempo or subdivision of the tempo. Like for instance, if it's a quarter, I may have to play it at 30-second notes or 16th triplets or whatever, because it's not going to sound interesting. And you hear that a lot. It's just quick running almost straight up and down a scale or a sequence. Those types of things, or something's chromatic but done in a bad way, it has to be played quickly. So that should kind of give you a clue as to like the level of the player that you're listening to. If you have to play a lick fast to make it sound good, may want to think twice about playing that lick. And the opposite though is if you have a good note choice, the tempo that you play the phrase at is going to be irrelevant. It'll sound good fast, slow, any tempo in between. So note choice over speed, you can definitely practice, and there's techniques, and obviously I will talk about that a lot, to bring stuff specifically up to speed when you do want to start playing quickly. But more importantly, choose your notes wisely. Okay, have fun.